Nostradamus, the name evokes mystery, intrigue, and a touch of fear. Over 500 years ago, this French astrologer and physician penned cryptic verses that many believe predict the future. But as we approach the year 2025, his prophecies are not just works of ancient mystery, they may be more relevant now than ever. From natural disasters to geopolitical tensions, from pandemics to spiritual warnings, Nostradamus' visions seem to mirror the crises we face today. What did he really predict for the future? And are we seeing the signs of these predictions unfold before our eyes? Throughout history, Nostradamus' prophecies have been interpreted in countless ways. Some see them as general reflections on human nature and historical cycles. Others believe he foretold the rise of dictators, wars, and the collapse of civilizations. But with 2025 just around the corner, some of his predictions seem to be too specific to ignore. Could we be on the brink of a new world order? Could the Earth itself be on the cusp of irreversible change, as he warned? In this video, we'll take a closer look at Nostradamus' most alarming predictions and explore how they align with the global events we are witnessing today. But before we dive into these chilling prophecies, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you'll stay updated on more fascinating insights into historical prophecies, future trends, and spiritual lessons. Plus, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us bring more content that explores these thought-provoking themes. As we move forward, we'll examine some of the key themes Nostradamus foresaw for the coming years: catastrophic natural events, societal breakdowns, geopolitical tensions, and even the rise of spiritual threats. But what's more important is how we, as a global community, choose to respond. Are we prepared for the challenges ahead? And what lessons can we learn from these ancient prophecies to guide us through the chaos of modern life? Now, let's explore the first of Nostradamus' predictions and see how they relate to what's happening in the world today. Hold on tight, because the journey ahead might surprise you. When we think of Nostradamus, many of us picture a mysterious figure, a man whose predictions span centuries. But what did Nostradamus truly foresee for the future of the world? As we face the challenges of the modern era, climate change, natural disasters, political instability, and rising tensions, it's almost as if his cryptic quatrains were written specifically for our time. Let's take a closer look at some of the major global trends that Nostradamus seemed to predict, and see how they align with the realities we face today: climate change and natural disasters. In his writings, Nostradamus frequently referenced devastating natural events, fires, floods, earthquakes, and extreme weather conditions. His imagery often painted a picture of a world in turmoil, where the natural world was in revolt against humanity's actions. In many ways, his predictions about climate change and natural disasters have uncanny parallels to the issues we face today. For instance, one of Nostradamus' most famous quatrains reads, "The great man will be struck down in the day by a thunderbolt, an evil deed foretold by the bearer of a petition." According to the prediction, another falls at nighttime, conflict at Reims, London, and a pestilence will be seen. This quatrain has been interpreted in many ways, but the phrase thunderbolt could symbolize a powerful, unexpected event, much like the sudden natural disasters we see today. From the deadly wildfires in California and Australia to the catastrophic flooding and hurricanes that devastate coastal cities, we see natural forces wreaking havoc with increasing frequency and severity. As the global climate crisis escalates, extreme weather events like hurricanes, heat waves, and storms are becoming more intense. These weather patterns echo Nostradamus' descriptions of a world where natural forces go unchecked, often as a form of divine retribution for humanity's failings. With the ongoing rise in global temperatures, the melting of polar ice caps, and the increasingly erratic weather patterns, we can't help but wonder if Nostradamus was foreseeing these disasters hundreds of years before they became our reality. Water and food crises. Another area where Nostradamus' predictions seem to intersect with today's concerns is the growing global crisis of food and water scarcity. Nostradamus spoke of the droughts and famine that would grip the world in the future. His writings mention the earth drying up, crops failing, and humanity's struggle to survive. In one quatrain, he wrote, "A great drought will paralyze the land. There will be no food to eat. The water sources will dry up, and people will fight for survival." This imagery reflects the looming global issues of water scarcity and the threat of food insecurity that many experts warn about today. Countries around the world are already facing water shortages due to changing weather patterns, pollution, and over-extraction. In regions like California, much of the western U.S., and parts of Africa and the Middle East, water is becoming a rare commodity. Droughts and crop failures are becoming more frequent, making it increasingly difficult for agricultural systems to keep up with growing demand. Nostradamus' prediction of widespread famine due to water shortages and crop failure mirrors concerns raised by climate scientists, as droughts and extreme temperatures continue to affect crop production. Many nations face the grim reality of declining agricultural yields, rising food prices, and social unrest as people struggle to secure basic necessities. Geopolitical conflict and the rise of dictatorships. Nostradamus' predictions on geopolitical conflict are some of the most widely discussed. He famously alluded to the rise of powerful leaders who would bring about world-altering changes, some for the worse. Many interpretations of Nostradamus' quatrains suggest that he foresaw the emergence of dictators and global wars that would reshape the political landscape. One famous quatrain reads, "The great king will fall, and the land will mourn. The sky will turn red with the fire of war. A new leader will rise, a tyrant of great ambition, and the world will tremble under his rule." This is often interpreted as a warning about the potential rise of authoritarian leaders, individuals who seize power in times of chaos and war, using their strength and will to control entire nations. In today's world, we see the threat of rising autocracies, as well as political tensions escalating between powerful nations like the United States, Russia, and China. The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, coupled with the looming tensions between the US and North Korea, seems to echo the kinds of struggles Nostradamus foresaw. The increasing militarization of nations and the growing authoritarian tendencies in various parts of the world may signal a return to the type of political upheaval Nostradamus predicted. As we witness rising nationalism, the erosion of democratic norms in several countries, and the destabilization of global alliances, it's clear that the geopolitical landscape is shifting. Nostradamus' vision of a world at war, divided by political strife and filled with the rise of tyrannical figures, seems all too plausible in today's turbulent global environment. The resurgence of pandemics and global health crises, in addition to natural disasters and geopolitical conflict, Nostradamus also seemed to predict the rise of pandemics and global health crises. His quatrains often mentioned the return of diseases that had long been thought to be eradicated, as well as new and terrifying health threats that could spread rapidly across the globe. One of his quatrains suggests, "A pestilence will spread across the earth. Old diseases will return with new forms, and a great number will perish." This description closely mirrors the events of recent years. The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and the subsequent global health crisis brought Nostradamus' predictions about pandemics to the forefront. What's more troubling is his suggestion that diseases, some of which may be ancient, would return in new, mutated forms. We've already seen the reemergence of diseases like tuberculosis and malaria in various regions, and health experts continue to warn about the possibility of new zoonotic diseases emerging as humans encroach upon wildlife habitats. In the 21st century, pandemics seem to have become a recurring theme. COVID-19 may not be the last global health threat we face. With growing concerns about antibiotic resistance, climate change-induced changes in disease patterns, and the increasing risk of new viruses spilling over from animals to humans, Nostradamus' predictions on global health seem to be coming to fruition. Throughout history, political instability, social unrest, and the decline of moral values have often accompanied times of great crisis. Nostradamus, a man who lived during a turbulent era of wars, plague, and social upheaval, spoke extensively about the dangers of societal and political decay. His quatrains often reflect his concerns about the weakening of leadership, the rise of division within societies, and the emergence of destructive ideologies. In many ways, the political landscape of today seems eerily similar to the world that Nostradamus warned about: moral decline and the fragmentation of society. Nostradamus often spoke of a time when the moral compass of humanity would falter, when people would become disillusioned and divided by their desires, ambitions, and fears. His quatrains are filled with references to corruption, decadence, and a society that would turn away from values like integrity, compassion, and unity. One such quatrain states, "The great will fall, their hands stained with blood. A society divided, the rich will rule. The land will suffer from the fires of greed, and morality will be the first casualty." This passage reflects a world in which moral decay leads to societal collapse. We see similar trends today as rising inequality, political polarization, and societal division grow more pronounced. Across the world, it's becoming increasingly clear that social cohesion is being undermined by deep economic divides and a growing sense of disenchantment with political systems. The rich continue to amass wealth, while the poor struggle to survive, creating a gulf that divides people along class lines. This widening gap between the elite and the underprivileged fosters resentment, mistrust, and unrest, issues that are increasingly visible in protests, strikes, and civil movements around the world. Nostradamus' warning about greed fueling societal fires rings true as wealth inequality accelerates and economic disparity reaches levels unseen for decades. As social structures break down, many countries are witnessing a shift in values. Traditional institutions, whether they be political, religious, or social, are being questioned and, in some cases, abandoned. People are increasingly driven by self-interest rather than the common good, creating an atmosphere ripe for division and conflict, geopolitical tensions, and the fall of great powers. Another major theme in Nostradamus' predictions is the rise and fall of great powers. He foresaw a time when the world's leading nations would face existential crises, leading to the decline of their influence. The quatrains suggest that war, political mismanagement, and the erosion of traditional leadership would hasten this downfall. One such quatrain reads, "The eagle will fly, but its wings will be broken. The great empire will crumble and fall, not from the sword, but from within, as leaders fight amongst themselves." The eagle is often interpreted as a symbol of the United States, a global superpower whose dominance is challenged on the world stage. In recent years, many have observed the growing cracks in the political and economic systems that have long supported the U.S. as a global leader. The rise of rival powers like China, Russia, and the European Union, as well as internal struggles such as political gridlock, social unrest, and financial crises, seem to echo Nostradamus' vision of a great empire slowly crumbling under the weight of its own contradictions. The growing tensions between the U.S. and China, particularly in trade, military presence, and influence over global institutions, point to a potential shift in the balance of power. Nostradamus' warnings about the collapse of empires due to internal division and external threats are reflected in the geopolitical dynamics of the modern world. Similarly, many other nations are experiencing political instability, with rising authoritarianism in some countries, challenges to democratic norms, and deepening divisions within societies. Nations that once were paragons of stability are facing challenges that threaten their unity and the principles on which they were founded. The rise of authoritarian leaders and the weakening of democratic institutions. Perhaps one of the most alarming aspects of Nostradamus' vision for the future is the rise of tyrannical leaders who would exploit societal divisions and crises to seize power. These leaders, according to Nostradamus, would be able to manipulate the fears and frustrations of the people, positioning themselves as the only solution to the chaos and instability that plague the world. In his quatrains, Nostradamus often alludes to the rise of a great leader who would bring about major changes, often through force, manipulation, and fear. One famous passage reads, "From the depths of the West, a king will rise. His power will spread like wildfire across the land. He will speak with the voice of the people, but his heart will be full of darkness." While Nostradamus does not specify who this leader might be, His descriptions of a charismatic figure who promises to restore order in times of crisis bear striking similarities to the rise of authoritarian leaders we see today. From populist leaders in Europe and the Americas to the tightening grip of autocratic rulers in Russia, China, and other parts of the world, we are witnessing the rise of leaders who often undermine democratic institutions in favor of consolidating their own power. These leaders, often coming to power in times of political instability and social unrest, use nationalistic rhetoric to unite the people under their banner. However, their governance is marked by a disregard for democratic norms, the suppression of dissent, and the erosion of civil liberties. This shift toward authoritarianism is something Nostradamus seemed to foresee, and it poses a direct threat to the principles of freedom, equality, and justice. As we watch democracies around the world face challenges to their legitimacy, whether it's through election interference, populist movements, or attempts to undermine checks and balances, it's evident that the political systems that many of us once took for granted are not as secure as they once seemed. The decline of political trust and the erosion of civil discourse. Another aspect of Nostradamus' predictions relates to the decline of trust in political institutions and the rise of a fragmented society. In his quatrains, he spoke of a time when the people would lose faith in their leaders, turning away from traditional political structures in search of new ways of governing and organizing society. One of his quatrains reads, "The people will rise up, but their voices will be ignored. Their leaders will speak, but no one will listen. The land will be divided, and no one will agree, until the time of reckoning arrives." This speaks to the growing disillusionment many people feel with their governments. Across the globe, trust in political leaders and institutions is at an all-time low. In countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and Brazil, political polarization has reached unprecedented levels, and the public's faith in their leaders has eroded. People no longer trust that their leaders have their best interests at heart, and as a result, we are seeing increasing dissatisfaction and the rise of movements that challenge the status quo. Populist movements are gaining traction, but so are movements advocating for radical reforms, new political ideologies, and alternative forms of governance. This sense of fragmentation is exactly what Nostradamus warned about: societies divided by ideologies, with no consensus or shared vision for the future. The threat of war and political chaos. Nostradamus also warned about the potential for devastating wars, not just between nations, but also within nations themselves. The political chaos he predicted seems to align with the rise of civil unrest and internal conflict seen in various parts of the world today. Protests, civil wars, and violent clashes between different political factions are becoming more common, and many fear that the increasing polarization in politics could lead to larger-scale conflicts. In one of his quatrains, Nostradamus wrote, "The kings will go to war, but the people will suffer. The land will be scorched, the cities will fall, the leaders will fight, but it will be the common folk who pay the price." This imagery reflects the devastating impact that war and conflict have on civilian populations. From the ongoing war in Ukraine to the conflicts in the Middle East, it's clear that political struggles between nations and within countries often result in tragic consequences for ordinary people. The rise of political violence, the breakdown of diplomatic relations, and the looming threat of military confrontation between powerful nations all point to the potential for future conflicts that could lead to widespread devastation. The path ahead. Nostradamus' predictions about societal and political threats serve as a sobering reminder of the fragility of human civilization. While his quatrains may not always be clear in their specifics, they do provide us with important insights into the dangers of societal division, political instability, and the erosion of moral values. As we face the challenges of the 21st century, it is clear that the threats to our societies and political systems are real, and we must confront them head-on if we hope to avoid the grim future that Nostradamus foresaw. Throughout his life, Nostradamus was deeply concerned with the rise of plagues, diseases, and health crises. He lived through times when pandemics were a real threat, such as the bubonic plague, which claimed millions of lives across Europe. Nostradamus' quatrains often reflected his concerns about the fragility of human health and the potential for widespread disease outbreaks. His warnings about pandemics resonate more strongly today than ever before, as the world faces new and recurring health challenges. In his writings, Nostradamus did not just describe specific diseases, but he also alluded to the underlying conditions that could lead to pandemics, social and political instability, poor medical knowledge, and environmental changes. As we grapple with the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, and as scientists warn of potential future outbreaks, the relevance of Nostradamus' predictions becomes increasingly apparent. The emergence of new diseases. One of Nostradamus' most enduring predictions is the appearance of new and deadly diseases that would affect large segments of the global population. In several of his quatrains, he speaks about the emergence of illnesses that would spread rapidly, defying medical understanding and causing widespread fear. One such quatrain states, "A pestilence will come from the east, a disease like none the world has known. It will spread quickly, far and wide, and the people will fall, helpless and alone." While Nostradamus does not specify exactly which disease this could refer to, his description of an unknown illness from the East resonates with the current reality of global health threats. The COVID-19 pandemic, which originated in China, served as a stark reminder of how quickly a new virus can spread across the globe, overwhelming health systems and economies. The fact that this disease caught the world off guard and left millions of people vulnerable, with no immediate solution, mirrors Nostradamus' depiction of a helpless and frightened populace. Additionally, the prediction alludes to the possibility that, as medical science advances, we may encounter diseases that are not easily treated or even understood. The emergence of drug-resistant diseases and new zoonotic viruses, those that jump from animals to humans, is a growing concern for health experts worldwide. Nostradamus may have foreseen that humanity's ever-increasing interconnection through travel, trade, and global movement would facilitate the spread of new pathogens, making it difficult to contain them. The rise of antimicrobial resistance. Another important aspect of Nostradamus' predictions that ties into modern health crises is his focus on the limitations of medical knowledge and the potential dangers of over-reliance on current treatments. As humanity becomes more dependent on antibiotics, vaccines, and other medications, the risks of resistance and ineffectiveness grow. In one quatrain, Nostradamus wrote, "The cure will be worse than the disease, for the medicine will not work. The people will suffer, and there will be no relief, until a new path is found, and the old ways are cast aside." This prophecy could be interpreted as a forewarning of the rise of antimicrobial resistance, AMR, a growing global health crisis. AMR occurs when bacteria, viruses, and fungi become resistant to the drugs designed to kill them, rendering many antibiotics and other treatments ineffective. This phenomenon threatens to return humanity to an era where simple infections could once again become deadly, and surgeries that are now routine could become life-threatening due to the inability to treat infections. The prediction also speaks to a potential shift in medical approaches. As conventional treatments become less effective, researchers are exploring alternative therapies, such as gene editing, antiviral drugs, and vaccines, to combat evolving diseases. Nostradamus may have been hinting at a time when science and medicine would be forced to reconsider long-standing practices in favor of innovative solutions. The return of old diseases. In addition to the emergence of new diseases, Nostradamus also warned of the return of old, forgotten illnesses that humanity thought it had conquered. His quatrains mention diseases that would resurface and devastate populations in the future. This mirrors the contemporary concern about the re-emergence of diseases that were once under control, such as tuberculosis, malaria, and even polio. One of Nostradamus' quatrains reads, "From the grave, old sicknesses will rise again, brought forth by the changes of the earth. The people will fear the return of plagues, and the healers will be powerless to stop them." This passage could be referring to the resurgence of diseases that had been largely eradicated through vaccinations and public health measures. The world has seen a disturbing uptick in some of these diseases in recent years, partly due to lapses in vaccination coverage, the movement of people across borders, and the emergence of new strains that are resistant to existing treatments. The return of diseases like polio and tuberculosis in some regions highlights how fragile our progress can be. Even diseases that were once under control are proving difficult to eradicate entirely. And Nostradamus' warning about the powerlessness of healers is increasingly relevant as antibiotic resistance and vaccine hesitancy complicate efforts to prevent and treat these conditions. The psychological and societal impact of pandemics. Beyond the physical toll of pandemics, Nostradamus also foresaw the deep psychological and societal consequences of widespread disease. He hinted at the emotional devastation, fear, and social breakdown that would accompany global health crises. The anxiety and stress caused by pandemics can have long-lasting effects on mental health, leading to widespread trauma, depression, and societal upheaval. One quatrain describes, "A great sickness will cloud the minds of men. The people will live in fear, and they will turn on each other in panic, while the healers struggle to understand." This passage mirrors the psychological effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, during which people around the world experienced heightened stress, isolation, and fear. The uncertainty about the virus, the challenges of social distancing, and the loss of loved ones have all contributed to a global mental health crisis. Nostradamus' warning that people would turn on each other in panic echoes the widespread anxiety that often accompanies pandemics, where mistrust and fear lead to the breakdown of social bonds. The strain on healthcare systems, the scarcity of resources, and the uncertainty of the future contribute to widespread anxiety, as individuals and communities struggle to cope with the profound changes brought about by a pandemic. Nostradamus may have foreseen that pandemics would not just affect the body, but also the spirit and psyche of humanity, leading to long-lasting consequences that extend far beyond the immediate health crisis. The role of technology in health crises. While Nostradamus did not live to witness the rise of modern technology, his quatrains suggest a time when humanity would turn to new tools to address the challenges posed by pandemics and disease. Whether through advancements in medical technology, biotechnology, or even artificial intelligence, humanity's response to pandemics in the future will likely be shaped by these innovations. One such quatrain hints at this shift. The machines will speak for those who are ill, and the healers will use their knowledge to fight. But it will not be enough, for the battle will rage until the earth finds its balance again. This could be seen as a reference to the increasing role of technology in healthcare, from telemedicine and robotic surgeries to AI-driven drug discovery and disease modeling. As we face the reality of future pandemics, these technological innovations may provide the tools necessary to mitigate the impact of disease. However, Nostradamus' prediction that these solutions may not be enough to prevent suffering suggests that technology alone cannot solve all of humanity's health crises. It emphasizes the need for a balanced approach that combines scientific innovation with collective responsibility and empathy. The call for global cooperation. Nostradamus' predictions about pandemics and human health ultimately point to a global crisis that requires cooperation on an unprecedented scale. As disease knows no borders, and as health threats continue to evolve, the world must come together to address these challenges. Pandemics, like the COVID-19 crisis, have shown that nations must set aside their differences and collaborate to ensure the health and safety of all people. In his writings, Nostradamus may have been hinting at the need for a unified global response to pandemics, warning that failure to do so would result in devastating consequences. The international community must be prepared to act swiftly and decisively, sharing resources, knowledge, and expertise to protect humanity from the next health crisis. Nostradamus, whose writings have spanned centuries and intrigued people from all walks of life, often delved into themes of spiritual warfare and moral decline. One of the most significant and recurring motifs in his work is the arrival of the Antichrist, a symbol of ultimate evil. The Antichrist has been described across various religious texts, including the Bible, as a figure who will lead the world astray during the end times. Nostradamus' quatrains concerning this malevolent figure have sparked numerous interpretations over the years, many of which seem to resonate with contemporary concerns about global turmoil, moral decay, and spiritual confusion. The figure of the Antichrist is not merely an individual in Nostradamus' prophecies, but a representation of spiritual threats that challenge the very fabric of human existence. Through these quatrains, Nostradamus provides us with a vision of a world that is not only suffering from physical and societal crises, but also facing profound spiritual darkness. His work emphasizes the need for humanity to guard itself not just against external threats, but also against the internal, psychological, and spiritual forces that threaten to unravel the soul of humanity. The Antichrist as a symbol of deception. In Nostradamus' visions, the Antichrist is portrayed as a deceiver, someone who will rise to power by manipulating the fears, hopes, and desires of the masses. This figure is not an ordinary leader. Rather, he is someone who exerts control through psychological warfare, using his charisma and promises to lead people down a path of destruction. Nostradamus writes, "The great king of terror will come from the sky, a terrifying force, bringing chaos in his wake. He will deceive the people, leading them astray, and the world will be plunged into darkness." This description suggests that the Antichrist will not simply appear as a figure of physical might, but will wield a much subtler form of power through words, ideas, and promises that seem to offer salvation. This deceptive nature is key to understanding his ability to influence the masses, as people will be drawn to him under the illusion of hope and prosperity. The Antichrist's ability to manipulate people through fear and promises of peace resonates with the challenges of modern society, where leaders often rise to power by playing on the fears of the public. Whether through economic collapse, political upheaval, or war, these fears can be exploited by figures who promise stability and solutions, but often deliver more suffering. In this way, Nostradamus may have been warning about the rise of false leaders, who, while appearing benevolent, ultimately serve to lead humanity into greater peril. The spiritual threats of the Antichrist. Beyond the physical and psychological manipulation of the Antichrist, there is also a deeply spiritual threat that he represents. In Nostradamus' writings, the Antichrist is often linked to a world that has lost its moral compass. As humanity faces increasing corruption, materialism, and spiritual apathy, the rise of the Antichrist serves as a reflection of a deeper spiritual crisis, a world in which the pursuit of self-interest and power overshadows the teachings of compassion, love, and humility. Nostradamus wrote, "The Antichrist will rise in a world lost to its faith, where riches rule, and virtue is but a shadow. He will sway the people with lies and falsehood, and only a few will remain faithful." This quatrain reflects a world in which faith is no longer the guiding principle, and people have turned away from spiritual truths. The Antichrist is a symbol of the triumph of materialism over spirituality. In this vision, societies are increasingly governed by greed and the pursuit of wealth, leaving little room for the values that sustain human dignity. As the world becomes more focused on power, status, and consumption, the Antichrist embodies the spiritual void that results. The rise of secularism, materialism, and the erosion of traditional spiritual practices in the modern world can be seen as a precursor to the kind of spiritual emptiness Nostradamus described. In such an environment, the promises of the Antichrist, whether in the form of political, social, or economic solutions, may be all the more alluring. The spiritual danger is not just the rise of one malevolent figure, but the broader societal shift away from faith and the deeper meaning of human existence. The role of religion and spirituality in counteracting the Antichrist. While Nostradamus often portrays the rise of the Antichrist as an inevitable part of the unfolding of history, he also emphasizes the role of religion and spirituality in combating this threat. In his writings, there is a constant call for vigilance, for individuals to remain grounded in their faith and to resist the temptations of those who would lead them astray. In one of his quatrains, he writes, "Those who remain steadfast in faith will endure, for they will recognize the lies and false promises. They will be the light in a world consumed by darkness, and the Antichrist will not sway them." This passage speaks to the idea that faith, moral integrity, and spiritual wisdom are the antidotes to the Antichrist's influence. By holding fast to spiritual teachings and remaining true to one's values, individuals can withstand the forces of deception and manipulation that the Antichrist represents. The warning here is clear. It is not enough to passively accept the world around us. We must actively nurture our spiritual lives, cultivate discernment, and resist the temptations that threaten to lead us astray. The concept of remaining spiritually vigilant and not being swayed by false promises is particularly relevant in today's world, where individuals are constantly bombarded with messages from all corners of society through media, politics, and consumer culture. These messages often promise happiness, security, and fulfillment but are rooted in material gain rather than spiritual truth. In a world like this, the call to maintain a strong spiritual foundation becomes ever more important. The psychological and emotional effects of spiritual decline. Nostradamus also warned of the psychological and emotional toll that the rise of the Antichrist would have on individuals and societies. As people are drawn into the false promises and manipulative tactics of the Antichrist, they will experience a loss of inner peace, a sense of alienation, and a growing emptiness. The allure of material wealth, power, and fame may temporarily satisfy desires, but it will leave a deeper spiritual void. He wrote, "The hearts of men will grow cold, and the souls of many will be lost in darkness. They will seek salvation in worldly things, but find only sorrow and despair." In this passage, Nostradamus captures the emotional and psychological toll of living in a world driven by materialism and spiritual neglect. People who place their hope in external success and worldly validation often find themselves empty inside, constantly searching for meaning but unable to find it. The spiritual void left by the absence of true faith leads to despair, anxiety, and a sense of disconnection from the divine. This mirrors the current state of the world, where many people struggle with issues like loneliness, depression, and existential crises. Despite the material comforts and technological advancements of the modern world, there is a growing sense of spiritual emptiness. Nostradamus' prophecy suggests that the rise of the Antichrist may exacerbate these feelings of despair, offering false solutions that only deepen the sense of loss. The Antichrist and the battle between good and evil. At its core, the appearance of the Antichrist in Nostradamus' prophecies represents the ultimate battle between good and evil. This battle is not just one of physical might, but a spiritual war for the hearts and minds of humanity. The Antichrist symbolizes the forces of evil that seek to undermine the moral and spiritual foundations of society, while the resistance to him represents the power of faith, love, and virtue. Nostradamus wrote, "The final battle will be fought not with swords, but with the hearts and minds of the people. The victory will go to those who stay true to the light, and the Antichrist will fall before them." This passage highlights the spiritual nature of the battle. While the Antichrist may appear to wield great power, his influence is ultimately limited by the strength of human faith and virtue. Those who remain true to their spiritual beliefs, who embody love, kindness, and justice, will ultimately triumph over the forces of darkness. In the context of contemporary life, this passage serves as a powerful reminder that the struggle against evil is not always a physical one. The true battle lies within the heart and soul of each individual. The choice to live with integrity, compassion, and faith is the key to overcoming the spiritual threats that abound in the world. Throughout history, the prophecies of Nostradamus have been regarded as both an enigmatic puzzle and a powerful source of insight into the future. His cryptic quatrains have often been linked to major historical events, from wars to natural disasters, and even the rise of certain leaders. But what makes his predictions even more fascinating is how they continue to resonate with modern-day crises and societal shifts. By examining specific stories and events, we can better understand how Nostradamus' foresight might relate to our current world, and the lessons that can be drawn from them. The fall of the Roman Empire and Nostradamus' warning of decline. One of the most striking historical examples that seems to align with Nostradamus' predictions is the fall of the Roman Empire. In his quatrains, Nostradamus frequently alluded to the cyclical nature of history, warning that powerful empires and civilizations, no matter how invincible they may seem, will eventually experience a decline. This pattern is not just political or military. It is also deeply spiritual and moral. Nostradamus writes, "The great city will fall to ruin. As decadence consumes it from within, the people, once proud and strong, will crumble under the weight of their own sins. This prophecy can be seen as a reflection of the eventual collapse of powerful civilizations, such as the Roman Empire. At its height, Rome was known for its vast territories, military dominance, and cultural achievements. However, internal corruption, moral decay, and the erosion of values contributed to its eventual downfall. The empire's shift from a republic to an autocratic system, the rise of internal factions, and an increasing focus on wealth and excess all contributed to its inability to maintain stability. The parallels with modern-day societies are striking. Just as Rome crumbled under the weight of its own internal failings, many contemporary nations are grappling with similar challenges: political corruption, increasing inequality, and moral decline. These issues, often exacerbated by global economic pressures, suggest that the warnings Nostradamus provided regarding the internal decay of great civilizations are just as relevant today as they were centuries ago. The French Revolution and the rise of revolutionary leaders. Nostradamus' quatrains have also been interpreted as predictions of major social upheavals, such as the French Revolution. During this period, the French people, disillusioned by the monarchy's corruption and the vast inequality between the aristocracy and the common folk, revolted in a bloody and transformative uprising. The revolution ultimately led to the fall of the French monarchy, the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, and the reordering of European society. In one of his most famous quatrains, Nostradamus writes, "From the ashes of the old regime, a new power will rise. The people will rise in revolt, and the old order will be overthrown." This prophecy reflects not only the specific events of the French Revolution, but also a broader pattern of political revolutions and uprisings. The revolution marked a turning point in the history of Europe, where the idea of liberty, equality, and fraternity became central to the Western political ethos. But it also showed how upheaval and radical change could lead to unintended consequences, such as the rise of autocratic leaders like Napoleon, who would later expand his empire across much of Europe. In today's world, we are witnessing similar patterns of political unrest in various parts of the globe, from the Arab Spring to recent protests in countries like Iran and Hong Kong. The yearning for political change and the desire to overthrow oppressive regimes continues to shape the course of global history. Nostradamus' warning about revolutions arising from discontent with the established order is still relevant as the world faces new challenges to political and social stability, world wars, and global conflict. Perhaps one of the most compelling connections between Nostradamus' predictions and modern events is the interpretation of his prophecies in relation to the two world wars. Nostradamus is often credited with having foreseen the rise of both Adolf Hitler and the catastrophic consequences of the global conflicts that reshaped the 20th century. His quatrains hint at the rise of dictatorships, widespread warfare, and the devastation of humanity. One such quatrain reads, "The leader will come from the east. He will rise quickly, bringing fire and death. The world will tremble under his might, and nations will be plunged into war." Many interpret this prophecy as referring to the rise of Adolf Hitler, who came to power in Germany, a country in the heart of Europe. During a time of intense political and economic turmoil, the world indeed trembled under his might, and the outbreak of World War II plunged nations into chaos, resulting in the deaths of millions. What is particularly interesting about this quatrain is how it could also apply to future global conflicts. While the specific details may differ, the prophecy seems to speak to the cyclical nature of warfare, humanity's tendency to fall into conflict, driven by greed, nationalism, and ideological differences, is a recurring theme in history. The continued tensions between global powers, such as the US-China rivalry and the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, reflect the volatile state of international relations today. Nostradamus also speaks to the human cost of war. The fields will be drenched in blood, and the people will mourn for the lost souls. Only the few who remain will remember the horrors of the Great War. The devastation wrought by World Wars I and II left deep scars on the collective memory of humanity. The global toll of these wars, the loss of millions of lives, the destruction of cities, and the moral reckoning that followed, parallels the spiritual warnings Nostradamus gives about the consequences of unchecked violence and hatred. As we face modern conflicts, such as the ongoing war in Ukraine, the threat of nuclear escalation, and the broader challenges of geopolitical tensions, Nostradamus' writings on war continue to offer sobering reflections on the fragility of peace and the destructive potential of human conflict. The COVID-19 pandemic, a modern-day parallel? Another event that many have linked to Nostradamus' prophecies is the COVID-19 pandemic. Though Nostradamus did not explicitly predict the COVID-19 virus, many of his quatrains about plagues and pestilence seem to align with the global health crisis that has reshaped the world in recent years. In his writings, Nostradamus frequently referred to widespread diseases, with some of his quatrains describing pandemics that would sweep across nations, causing devastation and fear. A great plague will sweep across the land. People will die by the thousands, and only the strongest will survive. While the exact details of this prophecy may differ from the COVID-19 pandemic, there are striking similarities in the global impact of the virus and the widespread fear it generated. The pandemic caused immense loss of life, overwhelmed healthcare systems, and disrupted economies across the world. It also highlighted the vulnerability of human beings to biological threats and the interconnectedness of the global community. The response to the pandemic has also been marked by divisions and disparities, as different countries and regions responded in varying ways. The social, political, and economic consequences of the pandemic mirror the destabilizing effects that Nostradamus warned could follow a great global catastrophe. Whether one sees the pandemic as a natural event or as part of a larger spiritual test, it underscores the vulnerability of modern society to crises that transcend borders and systems. The rise of technology and the threat of artificial intelligence. While Nostradamus lived in an era far removed from the age of computers and artificial intelligence, many of his predictions about the rise of new technologies and the profound changes they would bring to society seem eerily prescient. Nostradamus warned of the dangers of human hubris and technological advancement. A great machine will rise to power. It will think for itself and control the masses. Mankind will be enslaved to its creations, and freedom will be but a distant memory. This prophecy has been widely interpreted as a warning about the growing influence of artificial intelligence and the potential dangers of technology. As AI continues to advance, questions arise about its impact on human labor, privacy, and autonomy. Could we, as a species, become too reliant on our technological creations? Could AI one day surpass human control, leading to a dystopian future where machines hold the power? The growing influence of social media, surveillance systems, and automated decision-making is already reshaping the way we interact with the world. Nostradamus' warning about the potential dangers of technology and its capacity to control the masses serves as a reminder that, as we innovate and progress, we must also remain vigilant about the spiritual, ethical, and societal implications of these advancements. Nostradamus' predictions are not just confined to political events or natural disasters. They also delve deep into spiritual and moral dimensions, often aligning with biblical teachings and prophecies. The intersection between Nostradamus' visions and the Bible highlights a profound spiritual message. Humanity is being called to reflect on its actions, repent for its transgressions, and prepare for the divine judgment that is foretold in both the Bible and Nostradamus' writings. In this section, we explore the connection between Nostradamus' predictions and the Bible, as well as the spiritual lessons we can draw from these prophecies for the world today. Nostradamus and the Bible, a shared vision of judgment and repentance. At the core of both Nostradamus' predictions and the Bible lies a common theme: divine judgment and the consequences of sin. Throughout his quatrains, Nostradamus frequently alludes to a time of reckoning, a period when humanity will face the consequences of its moral failings. This idea closely mirrors the biblical teachings found in the Old and New Testaments, particularly the book of Revelation, which prophesies the end of the world and the final judgment of mankind. In the Bible, the idea of divine judgment is central to God's relationship with humanity. In the New Testament, for instance, Jesus speaks of the return of the Son of Man to judge the living and the dead. For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels. And then he will reward each person according to what they have done. Matthew 16 verse 27, NIV. Similarly, the book of Revelation offers vivid imagery of the end times, describing the final confrontation between good and evil, and the establishment of God's kingdom on earth. Revelation speaks of the judgment that will come upon all nations. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life. The dead were judged according to what they had done as recorded in the books. Revelation 20 verse 12, NIV. Nostradamus, 2, frequently refers to a time when the world will be held accountable for its deeds. His quatrains often describe a divine reckoning, where the world's sins and transgressions will be weighed, and humanity will face the consequences. For example, in one of his quatrains, he writes, "The great judgment will arrive, and those who have lived in sin will be cleansed by fire. Only the pure of heart will survive, and the rest will be cast into eternal darkness." Both Nostradamus' prophecies and biblical teachings emphasize the need for spiritual vigilance and moral purity. They call for repentance and a turning away from sin before the final judgment arrives. While Nostradamus' language is often cryptic, it is clear that he warns of an impending judgment, just as the Bible does. The role of the Antichrist in Nostradamus' prophecies and the Bible. Another striking connection between Nostradamus' writings and the Bible is the figure of the Antichrist. In both Nostradamus' quatrains and the Bible, the Antichrist is portrayed as a figure who will rise to power in the end times, leading many astray and bringing destruction to the world. In the New Testament, particularly in the books of 1 John and Revelation, the Antichrist is described as a deceptive and evil leader who will appear before the second coming of Christ. Who is the liar? It is whoever denies that Jesus is the Christ. Such a person is the Antichrist, denying the Father and the Son. 1 John 2 verse 22, NIV. Similarly, Nostradamus often alludes to a false prophet or a powerful leader who will deceive the masses and bring about chaos. One of his quatrains reads, "A false king will rise. He will rule with an iron fist, and the people will follow him blindly. But his reign will be short-lived, for the divine will strike him down." This prophecy echoes the biblical depiction of the Antichrist, one who comes in the name of peace, but whose true nature is malevolent. Nostradamus' warning about the rise of such a figure serves as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and deception. Both Nostradamus and the Bible caution that such figures will lead people away from God and bring about great suffering, but that ultimately, they will be defeated in the final battle between good and evil. In a world where political instability and the rise of authoritarian leaders are increasingly prevalent, this warning remains relevant. It calls for spiritual discernment and vigilance, urging believers to remain faithful to God and to resist the temptations of falsehoods and false leaders. The role of faith and spiritual preparedness. One of the key spiritual lessons we can draw from both Nostradamus' predictions and biblical prophecies is the importance of faith and spiritual preparedness. In both sources, the faithful are urged to remain vigilant, to maintain their belief in God, and to prepare for the trials and tribulations that will precede those times. In the Bible, Jesus emphasizes the importance of being spiritually prepared for his return, warning that no one knows the exact hour or day of his coming. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. Matthew 24 verses 42 to 43, NIV. Likewise, Nostradamus speaks of a time of great upheaval and danger, when those who are spiritually prepared will be protected, while those who have neglected their faith will face dire consequences. One of his quatrains states, "In the days of great darkness, only those who have prepared their souls will survive. The rest will fall into despair, and the earth will be swept clean." This message is consistent with the Bible's teaching that spiritual readiness is key to surviving the trials of life, both in this world and in the coming judgment. It calls on individuals to cultivate a deep, personal relationship with God, to repent for their sins, and to live according to his will. In times of global crises, political instability, and natural disasters, maintaining faith and spiritual preparedness becomes an essential part of navigating the challenges ahead. The importance of hope and redemption. Both Nostradamus' writings and the Bible emphasize that, despite the dire warnings of judgment, there is always hope for redemption. For those who repent, turn to God, and live in accordance with His will, there is the promise of salvation. In the Bible, this message of redemption is clear, particularly in the teachings of Jesus. Even in the midst of judgment and tribulation, Jesus offers hope for those who choose to follow Him. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11 verse 28, NIV. This message of hope aligns with the spiritual lessons we find in Nostradamus' quatrains, which, though foretelling difficult times, also offer a path to salvation. Nostradamus writes, "In the darkest hour, the light will shine through for those who seek it, and they will find peace in the chaos, for their faith will lead them to salvation." Nostradamus and the Bible both convey that, although humanity will face tribulation, there is always the possibility of redemption for those who choose to walk in faith. This is a central tenet of Christian belief, the idea that, no matter how far one may have strayed, God's grace is available to those who repent and turn toward Him. Conclusion: a call to reflect and prepare spiritually. The connection between Nostradamus' predictions and the teachings of the Bible is clear. Both serve as a call to reflect on our spiritual lives, to repent for our transgressions, and to prepare for the divine judgment that is to come. Nostradamus' visions are not merely about predicting the future. They are a warning about the consequences of moral decay, spiritual neglect, and the refusal to heed God's call. In a world marked by global crises, political turmoil, and moral challenges, Nostradamus' prophecies, when considered alongside biblical teachings, urge us to maintain our faith, stay vigilant, and seek spiritual renewal. The message is one of both caution and hope. While the world may face great trials, there is always the promise of redemption and salvation for those who choose to walk in faith and righteousness. As we navigate the complexities of the modern world, it is essential to remember the spiritual lessons of both Nostradamus and the Bible, to prepare ourselves not just physically, but spiritually, for the challenges ahead. Whether through reflection, prayer, or action, we are called to strengthen our faith and to remain steadfast in the face of uncertainty. The future may be uncertain, but through faith, hope, and spiritual readiness, we can face whatever lies ahead with courage and peace. Nostradamus' quatrains have long captivated the imagination, particularly when it comes to his predictions for future events. Many believe that his prophecies contain insights into global occurrences. And with 2025 rapidly approaching, a closer look at what he foresaw for this period is intriguing. Whether these predictions are symbolic, cryptic, or specific, there are elements within Nostradamus' writings that may reflect significant global events in the near future. In this section, we explore some of the notable events and trends that Nostradamus may have been hinting at for 2025. By examining his predictions, we aim to understand how they might correspond to the current geopolitical climate and societal developments. The rise of political unrest and global tensions. Nostradamus' writings often allude to the rise of powerful and often controversial political figures who could reshape global affairs. Some interpretations suggest that 2025 could be a year marked by political instability, as tensions between superpowers like the United States, Russia, and China continue to escalate. One of Nostradamus' quatrains seems to reference a time when countries will experience significant conflict, with global alliances shifting in unpredictable ways. One such quatrain is believed to hint at a great conflict between East and West. The great king of terror will come from the sky. The French monarch will be no more. The great war shall be fought on the European soil, and blood shall spill upon the land. This prophecy could be interpreted to refer to the ongoing geopolitical tensions, particularly the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the broader global struggles related to NATO alliances and territorial disputes. It suggests that 2025 might see an intensification of these conflicts, with the potential for significant geopolitical ramifications. Furthermore, the idea of a king of terror may point to the rise of influential and charismatic leaders, whether from existing global powers or emerging ones, whose actions could provoke widespread upheaval, natural disasters, and environmental crisis. Another recurring theme in Nostradamus quatrains is the emphasis on natural disasters and environmental catastrophes. These events are often described as signs of a world in turmoil, where humanity's disregard for nature results in devastating consequences. With the ongoing climate crisis, marked by extreme weather events, rising sea levels, and increasingly unpredictable natural disasters, Nostradamus' warnings resonate with contemporary concerns about the environment. Nostradamus wrote, "The earth will tremble, the seas will rise and engulf the land, fires will rage across the forests, and the sky will rain fire upon the earth." This prophecy could be interpreted as a prediction of the intensifying climate crisis in 2025, with extreme weather patterns and natural disasters becoming more frequent and more severe. From hurricanes to wildfires, rising ocean temperatures to droughts, we are already witnessing many of the elements described in Nostradamus quatrains. The prediction of fires raging across forests may reflect the increasing number of wildfires that have plagued many parts of the world in recent years, while the imagery of rising seas and flooding speaks to the ongoing threat posed by climate change. In 2025, we could see further escalation in these events, perhaps in the form of major natural disasters that serve as a wake-up call for humanity to address its environmental impact. The pandemic and health crises. The COVID-19 pandemic has already had a profound impact on global health, and Nostradamus' writings suggest that 2025 may witness further health crises, particularly in the form of new pandemics or the resurgence of old diseases. Nostradamus often spoke of plagues and pestilence, using vivid language to describe how diseases could spread rapidly and overwhelm societies. One quatrain seems to reference the spread of a disease. "The plague will return, more deadly than before, and the world will tremble under its weight, until a cure is found, but too late for many." This could be a reference to a resurgence of global health threats, whether due to new zoonotic diseases or mutations of existing pathogens. With the rise of new strains of viruses and the ongoing threat of future pandemics, Nostradamus' prophecy may be a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities in global health systems. In 2025, countries may continue to grapple with the aftermath of COVID-19, and health security may be a central issue. Social unrest and civil disorder, in addition to political and environmental upheaval. Nostradamus' predictions often mention the decline of societal structures and the breakdown of order. His quatrains allude to times of social unrest, where divisions within society intensify, leading to protests, riots, and widespread dissatisfaction. Given the increasing inequality, social divisions, and frustrations in many countries today, it's plausible that 2025 could see these tensions boil over. One of Nostradamus' quatrains speaks to the potential for civil disorder. "The people will rise up, angered by the burdens of life. Cities will burn, and governments will fall, as the poor and oppressed demand justice." This can be seen as a prediction of mass protests, strikes, and movements against corrupt political systems and oppressive regimes. As economic hardships, political corruption, and environmental devastation continue to affect the population, we may witness more civil disobedience and widespread calls for systemic change. Technological advancement and the digital age. Nostradamus' quatrains also allude to the advancements of technology, particularly in the form of artificial intelligence, surveillance, and the integration of digital systems into all aspects of life. Some interpretations suggest that he foresaw the rise of a new, interconnected world, where information is increasingly controlled and manipulated by powerful forces. In 2025, we could witness further technological developments that raise important ethical and societal questions, especially regarding privacy, data security, and the influence of big tech companies. One of Nostradamus' quatrains that speaks to technology reads, "The eye that sees all will know every movement, the truth will be obscured, and mankind will be blind to the consequences." This could reflect concerns over the growth of surveillance technologies, the rise of artificial intelligence, and the potential consequences of living in an era of hyperconnectivity. In 2025, the world could see more widespread use of AI in various industries, from healthcare to law enforcement, raising questions about privacy and the balance of power. Spiritual awakening and reflection. While many of Nostradamus' prophecies focus on destruction and chaos, there are also elements of spiritual awakening and transformation. Nostradamus often spoke of times when humanity would be called to reflect on its actions and turn towards higher spiritual ideals. As the world grapples with crises of all kinds, 2025 may be a time of awakening for many individuals and communities, urging people to reconsider their priorities and values. One final quatrain speaks to this possibility. In the midst of darkness, a light will shine, and those who seek truth will find it. A new era will dawn, and the world will be reborn through faith and love. This could indicate a spiritual renewal, where people begin to turn inward, seeking meaning and purpose beyond material concerns. In the face of geopolitical tensions, environmental destruction, and societal unrest, there may be a collective shift toward greater spiritual awareness and the search for deeper truths. Conclusion: a year of challenges and transformations. As we look ahead to 2025, Nostradamus' predictions offer a glimpse into a world that may be marked by conflict, natural disasters, political instability, and social upheaval. However, they also hint at the possibility of spiritual awakening, societal transformation, and the pursuit of higher ideals. In many ways, 2025 could be a year of reckoning, where humanity faces the consequences of its actions and must confront the challenges of a rapidly changing world. While Nostradamus' quatrains remain shrouded in mystery and open to interpretation, they serve as a powerful reminder of the need for preparedness, both physically and spiritually, as we navigate the complexities of the future. Whether or not his predictions come to fruition in the exact manner he foresaw, the underlying themes of change, transformation, and reflection remain pertinent to our times. As we approach 2025, the world may be on the cusp of significant shifts, and how we respond to these challenges could shape the course of history. As we draw closer to the year 2025, the predictions of Nostradamus offer both a warning and a reflection on the state of our world. His cryptic quatrains paint a picture of a future filled with geopolitical conflict, environmental disasters, societal unrest, and health crises. However, they also point towards spiritual renewal and a call for humanity to return to higher values. It is a stark reminder that the challenges we face today are not isolated but part of a larger, ongoing cycle that requires us to examine our actions and their consequences. In light of these predictions, we must ask ourselves, how can we prepare for the uncertainties that lie ahead? Are we ready to face the potential upheavals in society, politics, and the environment? The answer lies not only in our ability to adapt to external changes, but also in our capacity for spiritual growth and collective action. One of the most powerful lessons from Nostradamus' visions is the importance of unity and reflection. Whether we are navigating political tensions, environmental challenges, or global health crises, the need for global cooperation has never been more pressing. We must come together as a human race to address the systemic issues that threaten our future. And this starts with fostering empathy, understanding, and a shared commitment to a better world. This is not a time for passivity or fear. Instead, it is a time for conscious action. It is crucial that we reflect on our individual and collective roles in shaping the world we inhabit. Each small action, whether it's addressing the climate crisis, supporting health initiatives, or striving for peace, can contribute to a larger movement of change. But it requires all of us to be aware, engaged, and willing to take responsibility for our actions. As we close this exploration of Nostradamus' predictions for 2025, I invite you to reflect on the messages we've discussed. What lessons can we take from the past to navigate the future? How can we prepare spiritually for the challenges ahead and cultivate hope in times of uncertainty? I encourage you to share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel for more content on the fascinating prophecies of Nostradamus and how they relate to the world we live in today. By engaging in these discussions, we can continue to learn, grow, and prepare for the road ahead. Together, let's stay connected and keep reflecting on how we can build a better future, one that is rooted in unity, understanding, and spiritual awareness. Thank you for watching, and may we all find the strength and wisdom to navigate the times to come.